Hey, I'm Mr. Kev, welcome to my third season review. We're looking at the World Endurance Championship this year, the return of the World Endurance Championship after 20 years away, or as it was known then, the Sports Car Championship. The World Endurance Championship it was called from 1981 to 1985, and then it was called the Sports Car Championship, or various names until 1992 when it was cancelled. And it came back this year after the FAI and ACO saw that the Intercontinental Le Mans Cup was doing well, and so they upgraded it and replaced it with this World Endurance Championship. It had 8 rounds this year, starting at the 12 hours of Sebring in mid-March, and then the 6 hours of Spa at the beginning of May before the big one, the 24 hours of Le Mans in mid-June. Then we had the 6 hours of Silverstone at late August, the 6 hours of Sao Paulo mid-September, 6 hours of Bahrain late September, 6 hours of Fuji mid-October, and ending the season was the 6 hours of Shanghai at the Shanghai International Circuit in Shanghai, China at the end of October. And so that were the 8 rounds comprising this inaugural World Endurance Championship, or the return of the World Endurance Championship. And at the front we had Audi, we had Toyota for most of the season, but we did not have Peugeot because they withdrew, quite a shock announcement, withdrawing before the season began, and so their drivers had to get drivers in LMP1 or LMP2, and they really did go around the place. And if you don't know, endurance racing is split up into 4 classes. The Le Mans Prototype 1 LMP1 class, the Le Mans Prototype 2 LMP2 class, the Le Mans Grand Touring Endurance Professional class LMGTE Pro, and the Le Mans Grand Touring Endurance Amateur LMGTE AM. Quite a mouthful, and those are the 4 classes. And the top class LMP1 is split between the works teams of Audi and Toyota, and the privateer teams such as Rebellion Racing, Oat Racing, Pescarolo, Straka Racing, and JRM. And so those are the categories. Let's talk about the entries. I might have given away the entries of the LMP1 class, but we had Audi with their experienced team of last year with Andre Lottier, Benon Trouvelé, I apologise I said that wrong, a Frenchman, Marcel Vazia in the number 1 car. They had Aaron McNish and Tom Christian in the number 2 car, along with Dindo Capello for the first 3 rounds, and then Lucas de Grassi for the home round for him in Interlagos. And then we had a third entry for the first 3 rounds of Timo Bernhard, Marc Genet, Roman Demar, and Ludwig Duval, and they ran, as I said, for the first 3 rounds until Le Mans. And so those were the Audi entries. Toyota, they entered 1 car for the season from Le Mans for the rest of the season, with Nicolas Lapierre and Alexander Virtue with Kazuki Nakajima joining them at 3 rounds. And then they had the second entry for Le Mans, driven by Anthony Davison, Sebastian Buemi, and Stefan Salzan. And then we have the privateer teams such as Rebellion Racing. They had Neil Yarni and Nicolas Prost for the whole season, with Nick Heidfeld joining them for the first 3 rounds. And then they had a second entry with Howard Prema, Andre Binelli, I pronounced that horribly, had Jerome Beekemolen and Kung Fu Cheng for the last round in China. Oak Racing, and they had an entry for the whole year with drivers such as Bernard Boguet, Frank Montagny, and Takuma Sato for the last 2 rounds. And then you had the Pescarolo team, who entered their own car, and then they entered a Dome car as well, with Sebastian Bourdais, Nikia Manassian, and Senji Ara for Le Mans and Spa. But their main car, the Pesco 01 and 03, those were driven by Jean-Christian Bouillon, Manuel Collard, Julian Giroux, and Stuart Hall for the first 3 rounds. But unfortunately, they didn't come back after the first 3 rounds after suffering mechanical failures at Le Mans. And then we had Straka Racing with Johnny Kane, Nick Leventis, and Danny Watts for all rounds, and JRM with David Brabham, Karun Chandok, and Peter Dunbrack for all of the rounds. And so those are the LMP1 entries. Let's go to LMP2 with Signatech, Nissan entered the Arca 03 car with a Nissan engine, driven by Oliver Lombard, Frank Mathieu, Jordan Traston for all of the rounds, and then from the second round to the last round, they had the second car with Pierre Wage, Nelson Pesanzi, Roman Rostinov. I apologise if I say these names wrong. I'm not good at pronouncing names at all. And then we had Oak Racing again with an entry with Jack Nicolet, Olivier Pa, and Mathieu Yahay for all of the rounds, and as a second entry for select rounds. And I'm not going to even bother trying to pronounce some of those names. But they had a second entry. And then we had ADR Delta, who had an entry for all rounds driven by Tor Graves and John Martin, with select drives from Robbie Kerr, Dan Shoes, Shinji Nakano, and Mathieu Besh. I apologise if I said that wrong. He's a Swiss driver. I probably did. I put the emphasis on the wrong letters, but that was an entry for ADR Delta. We had Golf Racing Middle East with a Lola, and they had John Dennis Delatraz, famous driver from mid-90s F1. If you know him, he was probably the slowest driver around. And we had the Kendu Ayara for all rounds that drive in their entry, and had a second entry for the first 3 rounds. Then we have Lotus, a German entry, surprisingly, in the Lola. It was a Lotus engine basically, and it was a Lola chassis. See, I can't pronounce anything, but during the year they had drivers such as James Rossier, Lutzi, Jan Charuz, Christian Albers, Ranger van der Zande. They had an entry driven all year round by Thomas Holzer, so they had a variety of drivers in their 2 entries throughout the year. Graves Motorsport, they had 1 entry throughout the year, and then they had a second entry famously driven by Alex Brundle, Martin Brundle, and Lucas Ordis. Oh, I'm not pronouncing anything today, am I? But yeah, that entry drove at Le Mans, so they had an entry all year round. Starworks Motorsport. These names I can pronounce, apart from the first one. Enzo Pertuleco. I apologise if I said that really badly, as I did. Ryan Dial, Stefan Salazar, and Tom Kamer-Smith. They drove that entry all year round, or select rounds. And then we finally have Pecan Racing with Pierre Caffa and Luis Perez Compact Racing all year round, with Cyril Harari and Nicolas Menacion driving alongside them for the 4 rounds each during the year. And now we go to the LMGTE Pro class. Just when you thought, oh, we've had enough of him pronouncing names dodgy, I'm going to continue, because we've got 4 entries in the Pro class, and then we do have 6 entries in the AM class. So we have AFC Corsi Ferrari. They had 2 entries throughout the year, driven by Giancarlo Fisichella, Gianmarino Bruni, and Tony Villander in 1. And they had Andrea Bertolotti and Olivier Beretta and Marco Cuccini. I believe I said that right. Apologise again if I didn't. They had him in the 2 entries. Luxury Racing had Jamie Meadow, John Colvin, Fenji, Dominic Farbacker, and Federic Marwalki. Oh, I give up now. Yeah, they had him. They were around for the first 3 rounds, and then we have Team Farr, Mayer, Proton with Mark Lieb, Richard Litz, and Patrick Pele, Wolf Hensler for select rounds, but it was Richard Litz and Mark Lieb who drove for all of the rounds. And Aston Martin Racing, that's something I can announce. They returned to GT Racing with the Aston Martin Vanquish GTE after a horrendous year last year, but they returned this year, quite an successful return to GT Racing, with Stefan Mucker, Darren Turner, and Adrian Fernandez for the first 4 rounds. The Mexican joined them for the first 4 rounds, so I can pronounce those names. And now we're going to the final category, LMGTE AM. We have the Brieber competition with the Chevrolet Corvette, and they have Patrick Borhauser, Julian Canal for all rounds, and they had John Philip Belloc, Philip Barrett, Pascal Gibbon for all rounds in the other car as well. And they have Pedro Lamy joining them in select rounds with Fernando Rees. Now we've got JWA with their Porsche, and they had Joe Camnasos, Marcus Palata, Bill Binney, that's the name, Paul Daniels, not the magician I think, Penny Simon Singh, Kenji Kobayashi, and Matt Bell for their entry driving throughout the year. Now we've got Crone Racing, an entry I know well from American Endurance Racing with Tracy Crone, Nicholas Hansen and Michelle Rugolo driving that all year round. We've got Luxury Racing again with a number of drivers driving for them. And then we've got AFC Corsa, the second entry for them, with Michael Wildrop and Brian Vickers driving in select rounds. We've got Enrique Bernaldi, Matt Griffin, Marco Chieti. I'm not saying that right, am I? And Giuseppe Panzani, who, apart from saying his name rubbishy, you were going to hear about him at Le Mans. And we got Team Far Mayor Proton, and they are Christian Reed, Gianluca Roda, and Paolo Ruberti. Okay, I've given up on saying names. Let's actually talk about the season now. As I said, we had 8 rounds. We started at Sebring, and it was a win for Audi as Toyota. They weren't entered. They were going to try and enter for Spa, but then a testing accident meant they couldn't enter for Spa, so they actually started at Le Mans and then continued for the rest of the season. But we had an Audi win for the number 2 car for Matt Nish, Tom Christensen, and Fernando Capello. They won from Timo Bernhard, Roman Demar, and Luc Doval with an LMP2 overall podium. The LMP2 car that won the class with Star Wars Motorsport, Ryan Dial, Enzo Pinocchio. Yeah, I'm going there. Stefan Saras won that class. And then we also had American Le Mans Series entries as well, because it was running in conjunction with that. The American Le Mans Series entries, though, they only scored points for the American Le Mans Series. They didn't score points for the World Endurance Championship. And so the winner of actually the overall top American Le Mans entry was actually the P2 class, the Level 5 Motorsports car, driven by Scott Tugger, Christian Bouchou, and Jon Boza. And completing the top 5 was the second place in the LMP2 class for the World Endurance Championship was Oak Racing, Jack Nicolay, Olivier Parr, and Manu Lahaye. And so that was Sebring. We had good battle in GT as well, as we always do, racing for most of the whole race. It was nail bite, and in the end, the number 71 AF Corsa car of Andrea Bellotti, Marco Ciancini, and Olivier Beretta won it. And in GT the team Freimer Proton won with Christian Reed, Paolo Roberti, and Gianluca Roda. And so we go to the second round in Spa-Francorchamps, and this has gone on for way too long already. So we're going to be fast, and we're going to talk fast. We're only going to talk about the winners, really, because the race was interesting in Spa, but is most known for Audi debuting their hybrid car, their hybrid engine. And the car didn't actually win, it came second and fourth, but the winners were Romain Demar, Luc Duval, and Marc Gené in the old Audi R18 Ultra. The e-tron Quattro came second with Lothar Falzer and Trudevet. In third came the old R18 Ultra with Olivier Jarvis and Marco Bononomi. And in fourth came Nish, Tom Christian, and Rindo Capello in the e-tron Quattro. Getting top 5 overall, and top of the privateers was Rebellion Racing with Nicola Prost, Neil Yarni, and Nick Heidfeld. But winning in LMP2 was the ADR Delta car of John Martin, Robbie Kerr, and Tor Grays. Winning in LMGT, actually both classes were the Team Freimer Protons of Mark Libbs and Richard Lentz in the Pro class, and Christian Reed, Gianluca Roda, and Paolo Roberti for the AM class. And so we go to the big one in Le Mans, and this was a great Le Mans for 6 hours. And then Toyota, they were challenging, they were fighting hard at the front, and then we had a horrendous accident involving Anthony Davison, and I said that guy's name that he had to remember, Giuseppe Pizzani. he collided with that Ferrari and he went flying into the barrier at the end of the Mulsanne straight, and he actually hurt his back and he couldn't drive for the rest of the year. And it was horrendous, but it does show the safety of these guys that he survived an impact like that and I say only, hurt his back. But it was a terrifying accident, and it kind of actually spelled the end as Toyota kind of had problems afterwards, and it was left to Audi to win at Le Mans, and it was that trio again, the #1 car. Andre Lotto, Marcel Fazio, and Benon Trouvier won in the R18 e-tron Quattro. So the hybrid won their first race there, and the Toyota hybrid put up a great fight, and it was a good Le Mans. And then in second was Al Matnish, Windo Capello, and Tom Christian in an e-tron Quattro, that behind. And then completing an all-Audi podium was Oliver Jarvis, Marco Bomennomi, and Mike Wockenfeller in the R18 Ultra, the old car. In fourth was Nicola Prost, Nick Heidfeld and Nirvani in a Rebellion race, and top privateer again, 11 laps off the leader. And that behind them was the other Audi R18 Ultra of Marc Genet, Romain Demar and Luc Duval, ahead of the JRM entry of David Brabham, Peter Dunbar and Cohen Chandok. And then behind them was the winners of the LMP2 class, Starworks Motorsport again, Enzo Pinocchio, Brian Duval and Tom Camber-Smith, and they won in quite a good, interesting LMP2 battle for quite a while as well. And then again we have the GT class, and they were going battle like hell at the beginning. We wondered how could they last for 24 hours. Well, it all spread out, and eventually cars had problems such as the Aston Martin, and it was left to the Ferrari AF Corsa of Gianmaria Rubino, Giancarlo Fisichella and Tony Vayanda to win. The number 51 entry did very well in the Pro class, and in the AM class we had the Libra competition winning their home race. Patrick Vorhauser, Giovanni Canal and Pedro Lamy, they won at the very end in the last 5 minutes. A heartbreak for second place in that class. They just snatched the win in the end, and it was a very interesting Le Mans. Second place was Anthony Pons, Nicholas Almindo and Roman Yar in the IMSA Performance Malmont Porsche, and it was a very interesting Le Mans again, and I'm looking forward to it next year, and then looking forward to it in the coming years with Porsche coming back to its home in endurance racing. And so we go to the midway point after a great Le Mans with Silverstone, and it was the #1 car again, winning Fazio Trouvier and Lotterer, just continuing the great run. But we had another winner for the ADR Delta #25 car with John Martin Torgreaves and Jan Charuz this time at Silverstone. There's 6 hours of Silverstone. And the number 51 car won again in Pro with Giancarlo Fisichella and Gianmarino Bruna. And then number 61 AFC Corsa Wardrop with that guy, Panzini, Marco Cecchini and Matt Griffin won the AM class. And so at the halfway mark we had Audi winning all the races. We had a good fight in MP2 with Starworks and ADR. F Corsa were kind of running away with the Pro class. And in AM we had good competition about the Uber competition. Car from France was starting to challenge the old Porsche of the Team Pharma. And so we went to Sao Paulo, and again we were kind of expecting Audi to do well here, but Toyota, they got running very early, and they got a great car, and they just ran away from in the race. And the number 7 Toyota Racing of Alexander Wurz and Nicola Lapia got the first win for Toyota back in LMP1 competition. You may have seen the GT1 in the background from Forza 4. That was the last time they were in endurance racing, and now they have won since then. And the second half of the season was all about Toyota. Audi won the next race with Fazio Trouvier and Lotterer, and they virtually guaranteed themselves the drivers' title lottery, Juve and Vazza after that win. But behind them, and for the rest of the season, you had Toyota, the number 7 car with Wirtz, Napier, Nakajima in Fuji, and then Wirtz and Napier in the finale in Shanghai. They won those races, and the Toyota's coming on strong, and it looks like next year it's going to be an interesting battle between Toyota and Audi, and I'm really going to look forward to that, as we had McNish and Christensen in joint second behind the top 3, and then we had Wirtz and Napier in joint third. But next year it looks very interesting. That's in the Drivers' World Championship. In the works, in the Manufacturers' World Championship, of course, Audi won from Toyota, but again, I said Toyota won 3 of the last 4 races at the last half of the season, so it's going to be very interesting next year. And behind them, in LMP1, the Privateers and the LMP1 trophy. Rebellion Racing won it. They had basically scored a victory in 5 of the first 7 races, and they sealed it in Fuji ahead of Stracker Racing, JRM, Oak Racing, and then Pescarello team came last. As I said, they didn't enter after the 3rd round, and Oak Racing missed 3 rounds in the middle from Silverstone to Bahrain, but Rebellion Racing showed they were the class again of the Privateer LMP1 cars. And in the Drivers' Championship, they had Nicola Prost and Neil Yarni finish joint 4th ahead of Rindo Cabello in 5th, who only did the first 3 rounds though. And so going to look to Rebellion again to maybe get close to the manufacturers team. Probably not, but we're looking at them to be the class of the Privateer LMP1 next year. So in LMP2, the interesting battle continued. We had ADR Delta win the last 2 rounds with Torgoose, John Martin, and then Shinji Nakano and Mattia Bish respectively. And then Pecan Racing won in Bahrain the 6th round with Luz Perez Compact, Nika Nacion and Pereira Cafa. And then in Sao Paulo, we had Starworks winning with Dial, Sazan and Pinocchio. And so it was an interesting battle in MP2, but in the end, Starworks got it just by being a bit more consistent. Has ADR Delta, they came 5th and 6th in Sao Paulo and Bahrain. Well, Starworks' only finish off the podium was in Spa with 8th, so well done to Starworks for winning the LMP2 trophy out of ADR Delta, Pecan Racing, Oak Racing, Greaves Motorsport, Signatech Nissan, Gulf Racing, Middle East, and Lotus, continuing a horrible year for the Lotus brand there, apart from F1, which we'll talk about on Sunday. And now we go to the GTE Pro Trophy, and as I said, of course, they just again on top of this championship after Le Mans, and they continue to win. They continue to win the class with the number 51 car in Sao Paulo and Bahrain, with Giancarlo Fisichella, Geronimo Rubino in Sao Paulo, and then Tony Vianda in Bahrain. But then Team Freimeier Proton 1 in Fuji with Mark Litz and Richard Litz, Mark Lieber and Richard Litz. But in the final round, we saw the Aston Martin Racing number 97 machine with Stefan Mücke and Darren Turner grab a well-deserved victory. They really have come on the pace this year, and it's a great return for Aston Martin to the LMP GTE Pro class. But who won the trophy? Of course, it was AF Corsa. Aston Martin came second, just pipping Team Freimeier Proton. Again, a retirement at Le Mans really did cost that team, and Luxury Racing came last, but they only entered the first 3 rounds. And that leaves us with the LMGTE AM trophy, which won by Lieber competition. As I said, at Le Mans, they were starting to grab hold of this competition, while Team Freimeier Proton, again, they retired in the AM class at Le Mans, and that really did cost them the title, as they finished second to Lieber competition with Korn Racing in third, of course, the Wall Trip in fourth, JWA in fifth, and again Luxury Racing only entered the first 3 rounds in sixth. But the winners in the AM class for the last 4 rounds, as I said, Team Freimeier Proton for the number 88 car won in Sao Paulo and Bahrain, and in the Lieber competition number 50 car won in Fuji and Shanghai with Patrick Bullhauser, John Canal and Pedro Lamy. And that is the end of this review. It went on for ages, as you could probably tell, but I hope you did enjoy it. I promise you my World Rally Championship review tomorrow and F1 review on Sunday are going to be a bit more structured than this was, because there's so much to cover with all these different classes in this World Endurance Championship. But there's a great return for it, and I hope to see next year Audi and Toyota battling hard in LMP1, Rebellion Racing holding on in the privateer class in LMP1, to see StarWorks return, be successful in LMP2, to see Ferrari and Aston Martin duel hard with Porsche, joining in the Pro class. And in the GT class, I want to see some more Chevrolet Corvettes and more Porsches fighting hard, with maybe Ferrari joining in as well. And I hope you did enjoy this review. Thanks for watching. So till next time, cheerio.